Harihi Hiranyavarnam Harinim Suvarnarajatasprajam Chandram
Centuries back, oral communication was used for information dissemination. Knowledge was also passed on from one generation to another through oral communication. With the development of script, communication could be preserved in the form of books made up of papyrus. As a result, knowledge was stored and disseminated in a small scale. But the invention of the printing press revolutionized the mode of communication. Knowledge and information dissemination process became easier. A single copy of the book was multiplied in innumerable copies. In the beginning of the 17th century, regular newspapers came into existence. With the launching of the first newspaper in India in 1780, many changes occurred in newspaper communication. The newspapers published in many languages in the country now reach every nook and corner of the land.
All India Radio presents Morning News.
The invention of the radio brought a sea change in mass communication. Information dissemination became much easier. Non-literate population was benefited. The radio reaches 97% of the population in India.
With the arrival of television and also the cable television in the country, a large section of the population was attracted by the medium. Doordarshan, the government mass communication channel, reaches 92% of the population in India. Television became an omnipresent medium as information dissemination process is faster and faster than ever with the help of visuals. The Western culture is impacting the society. Along with these mass communication channels, Internet also started disseminating information. The Marshall McLuhan's view of global village is a reality now. Now, let us see, how do people prefer different media?
I prefer the newspapers, magazines, journals, because I can read in the travel. But I prefer television after once reached at the home, because television provides latest and up-to-date information.
मुझे टीवी और रेडियो पसंद है, खास तौर पर मुझे टीवी ज़्यादा पसंद है क्योंकि टीवी में सुनने के साथ ही साथ हम तस्वीर भी देखते हैं.
I generally prefer TV, but then while I'm journeying, it has to be radio and FM in particular. The kind of quality of music that you have, the kind of variety that you have pop, classical, western, Hindustani, everything. While journeying, you enjoy the music, you enjoy the ride. It's simply spectacular. Nothing to beat it. Absolutely none. Great.
I prefer sound broadcasting. Radio, it's cost effective because of its reach. It's not a captive medium.
In this situation, each mass communication channel is making all-out efforts to reach the audience with their latest information. But how can the two media, the press and the radio, face the situation?
Keep doing its job. I think print media will always have its place. There's a tactile pleasure to opening and closing a newspaper, the number of situations in which you can comfortably read it, you know, the control you have over your absorption of that information. Whereas with TV, you're a slave to, you know, the passivity of your own role of that in that medium. You just have to sit and listen. That's useful. It's TV captures change far more vividly and quickly than print. But I think there is a need to sit and absorb things at a more individual and personal pace. And that is why newspapers bringing the quality of reflection, the quality of overviews, which sometimes TV programs don't allow because the soundbite is so all important.
When there is expansion of media, when more and more media come into the fields, there is bound to be certain amount of fragmentation of audience. This has happened to the print medium. In the city of Delhi, there used to be only 2 newspapers. Today there are half a dozen or even 10 newspapers. And there are radios for all the 10 newspapers. Similarly, in the case of radio also, there has been a reduction in the number of listeners if you look at it from the point of view of fragmentation of audience. But you must also look that in a period of 20-24 hours time available to the people, they have a system of budgeting their media time. It is said that the time devoted by anybody is about 2 to 3 hours a day. How he budgets that time, how much of time he devotes to radio, how much to television, and how much to other media, depends upon the services he gets from the local media, and also his own personal interest, and also his avocation in life. Suppose he is a person who is always moving about, then he can't but depend upon the radio. And now with the FM radio becoming so popular, you can't say that radio listening has gone down. Radio listening, on the contrary, has gone up.
Now, let us see how they reorient themselves to play a much more active role in the country. What types of contents or programs do they offer to the audience?
I don't see how we can go better than the critical role we already play. I'm concerned about 2 areas which I feel are being neglected in our country today in the media. One is development journalism and the other is arts coverage. I think a very important national treasure like the arts is being neglected and being denied space. That's a shame because it's possibly the one area of national life in which we can still hold our heads up. Everywhere else there's so much disillusionment. One thing does worry me about the contents of newspapers, and that is what is going to happen when we come out of this transitional phase that we're presently in. The old guard is used to pontificating. There's a certain very, I would say, male school of thought that says journalism is only politics and news, government and opposition, and everything else is somehow to be disdained and it's trivial. That is not true. That leaves out the whole texture of national life. When we get away from the 3 main obsessions of sports, politics and films, there is a whole rich life being lived by ordinary people, which needs documentation. It's terribly important to see how the country is ticking. Now, here's the difference between how the old guard thinks and writes and the younger lot of journalists who I feel may be being influenced by television, maybe having to do with the sheer burden of information to be absorbed. They're in such a hurry that quality loses out. And I say this with great sadness and yet with great hope, because I do hope they realize that it's not a sellout, it's not a waste of time to study, to learn the spellings of names, to ask questions if you don't know. It's all right to ask, because your duty, your dharma as a communication person is to the reader. You have to give them the best you can. And if this isn't absorbed as a sort of mool mantra, the whole business of communication is then corrupted, you know. So this is something I hope will pick up.
There has been a sea change. If you look at the developments over the last 50 years, you will find that the radio medium has changed, not only with regard to physical coverage of the country, but also in regard to the services it provides to listeners. Some 50 years ago, we used to have 6 radio stations, each broadcasting for a duration of 6 to 7 hours. And of the 6 to 7 hours, 60 to 70% of the programs would be music. But today the situation has changed. There are radio stations which broadcast programs for 24 hours a day. Many of the stations broadcast programs for 18 hours a day. And the percentage of music programs has come down from 70% to 30%. And what has been deleted from the music fare has been devoted to what is called the public service broadcast, the social education programs.
When they are trying to attract the audience attention, will they survive and withstand competition from the television? Is it a media war?
Gosh, this is one of those ongoing battles at the moment. You know, about newspapers losing circulation, this is obviously something that's very worrying, but in a sense you're part of a macro picture. There is a recession on. People are just not willing to spend on ads, which are the, rivers of gold that sustain a newspaper. There are bound to be, we are part of the whole national scenario in that sense, so we are suffering along with everybody else. But if we hang in there, hopefully good times will come again.
Radio broadcasting is relevant in spite of the quantum jump in the media facilities covering television or any other medium. Therefore, no medium dies out. And the radio medium is the last to die out because the radio broadcasters have over a period of time acquired the capacity and the skill to orient themselves into changed circumstances. And if more changes take place in the country, the radio broadcast will also make changes accordingly, in tune with the changing times.
In this era of satellite television, what is the future of the radio? Can the radio go global like television?
World Space Corporation has launched, as you know, already 2 satellites, one to cover all of Asia and the other one to cover all of Africa and the Middle East, and in fact we cover also Europe with the African satellite. And we plan to launch a 3rd satellite that will cover Latin America. The global operations of World Space is really intended to cover all of the developing world and with spillovers into Europe. And the intention of these satellites is, as you correctly noted in your introduction, to broadcast audio and multimedia directly to a new generation of receivers with a mission of creating information affluence in all parts of the world that today have information dearth.
The entire media industry is driven by software and the content. Whatever may be the technology, the best technology, the latest technology, it will be of no use whatsoever unless the content is going to satisfy the viewers, particularly in the radio and television industry.
Nevertheless, no medium dies now and will be alive and kicking. All media co-evolve, coexist and coordinate their functions.